This is Ryan Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Lab. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Lab, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Have you had your Earthblend Coffee today? At Earthblend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earthblend Coffee.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
Support the Black College Sports Network so we can continue to provide you coverage. Go to myjbn.com/support and be a part of the Black College Sports
Tell everybody they can follow their dreams.
YT Productions.
Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. Yeah. I hope my team they won. Yeah. Man. I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson. And you gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, boy, you gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, yeah. We represent that SWAC, that MEAC, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee?
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Mike Washington is still on assignment. He might sneak in here. You know, Mike, he works on assignment, then he comes and goes. Sometimes you have a luxury when you're the man, so you can handle it like that. But how you doing, Charles?
Doing well, Doc. Doing well. Trying to get all this HBCU news in, getting all these inbox and whatnot. And I tell you what, it's always something to buzz in the HBCU stratosphere. So can't wait to get into it today.
No doubt about it. Great point. With that, welcome to episode 120 of Inside HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, the show that's covering the sporting HBCU diaspora. All things HBCU sports for the institutions large and small, from NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We're filming from our home studio and sending a signal live to KCOH 1230 AM studios with Texas Radio Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. With that, today's episode of Inside HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THC Agency. THC Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational consulting and data analytics. With that, Charles, let me jump right to you. You said you're doing pretty good today. I see you with your jacket on, man. You're looking part of the course. I'm going to tell you before I let you break down the news, and people already heard it, but we'll get into what this means and so much. This is the week where I have to have a little fun. We have this in multiple sports, but it seems to really be exciting for football. For those that don't know, my wife went to Alabama A&M. Undergrad, I went to Prairie View. Both of us actually did our masters at Texas Southern University. So you see a little bit over here. House United, and it's United based on Texas Southern University. But as you see with the Prairie View in here as well, pull it up and make sure you see the whole thing. This is a week where the house has a friendly wager, if you would. And based on the outcome of the game, the significant other, right, has to wear the shirt of the university that won. So this was the week on Sunday, and sometimes
wow.
Excited. It might happen Saturday afternoon if it goes in our favor. But yeah, it's a fun thing that we do. Deuce loves it around the house because he runs back and forth between the two institutions, including Texas Southern. So he loves them all. So it's fun out there. And Charles has started manipulating his mind. And so now he even has affinity to Jackson State University. I love. We'll have to make sure we straighten that out before too long.
Got to get them young.
Yeah, it's really what he does. And so he makes sure he understands that Sonic Boom and Salve and all that kind of stuff. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then my groom apparel shop, obviously, with Mogul Threads. He's a Southern graduate, so he makes sure he knows about Southern, and he went into school, had the Southern hats on. I said, yeah, he can wear HBCU stuff. So one of his teachers from Southern trying to get his hats. I said, you better watch out, he go get you. And so that is hilarious. So yeah, we have a lot of fun around here in regards to that. But because of the news, that will not be the case, as you will allude to, I'm sure. So the breaking news of the day, since I done jumped all in it, Prairie View announced, SWAC officially announced Prairie View next two games will be postponed as they will stay in the COVID protocols, which means this week against Alabama A&M, and poor Alabama A&M, they just literally have buzzer luck. I don't know what else to say. And week, which Southern just had an article out today out of the Baton Rouge Advocate talking about they were the only team that had not been affected by COVID-19 protocols, whether it was them themselves or their opponents. Well, that will change as of next week. Hopefully they'll be able to get the big game in with the rival Jackson State, which we'll get into. That should be some fun. We'll take a deeper dive in that Thursday, but we'll touch on it a little bit today. as well as the fact that you also are into it in regards, you already have the Grambling postponed with Texas Southern for Grambling. So I wonder if there's any indication maybe Alabama A&M and Texas Southern will hook up. Is that a possible? Is that things they do? Or is it pre-scheduled? I mean, you had the Alabama A&M find a way to get the game done with South Carolina State. That was kind of that midweek, last minute type of thing. But it'll be interesting to see, is that plausible? Since they were coming this way, maybe they can just stop in Houston versus Prairie View. We'll keep you updated on that. Not sure how realistic it is, but I thought that was something to consider. But with that, what are your thoughts in terms of Prairie View, Southern cancellation, SWAC cancellation, Grambling cancellation, and in a lot of ways, Alabama A&M? As Mo Carter's out there, as he said, he's getting the interview, Coach Maynard, and I'm just like, I know he's just feeling devastated and it's like, what did I do wrong? But go ahead.
I mean, your heart goes out to Alabama A&M. I mean, this lets you know that COVID is real. It's still in the midst of going on, although we are, seemingly getting better in terms of vaccinations and things of that nature. But it still has the ability to stop the sports world, and we've seen it happen quite often in this spring season. So your heart goes out to Coach Connell Maynard and his Alabama A&M football team in terms of trying to get these games in. And I tell you what, Doc, I'm going through some Quill Glass withdrawal, man. I've been wanting to see Alabama A&M now for the past 3 weeks. And I was, if I wasn't going to be at Jackson State Southern, Alabama A&M and Prairie View was the game that I definitely will have my eyes on this weekend, when you're talking about one of the better defenses in the SWAC going up against one of the better offenses in the SWAC. And, we've talked so much about Quill Glass. We saw them, what they were able to do once they got on track against South Carolina State, but definitely want to get them in some SWAC action and see, how they match up against some of these teams in the spring season.
Yeah, I mean, it's great points you're making there in terms of what that looks like getting into it. With that said, let me stay with you and talk about what's some other news of the day that you want to share.
Yeah, well, we talk about this in terms of the transfer portal and UAPB's, their leading scorer, Sean Doss. He's into the transfer portal. He's a 6-foot point guard who led them with 15.9 points per game and also led the team in rebounding. So he enters the transfer portal as well. He is joined by Marquedrick Bell from UAPB. So we see 2 more players enter the transfer portal. Transfer portal is stuffed with players right now. So we'll see how this all plays out. But it makes for a very interesting sort of dynamic, in terms of team turnover from year to year. So it is what it is. This is, these student athletes, they have the ability now to transfer and to find themselves in a situation that fits them best. So we wish them all the success and all the luck in the world.
Great points you're making all the way around. It's fascinating from the standpoint that most people know me, that I'm a significant HBCU advocate in so many different ways. Literally was able to start a sport management program at HBCU, received all my degrees from an HBCU, bachelor's, master's, and a doctorate. So a lot there, but bigger than that for me is player advocacy and players having the right to make a decision in their choice. So for some people, I know that it's heartbreaking, a lot of things like this, but for me, it's about the students. I mean, we're grown. We're most of us are employed. Many of us doing quite well, and certainly like to celebrate young people and help them. And if this is an opportunity for them to continue playing their career, more importantly, get a degree. Some of them may not have opportunity to get their degree without the charge that they would have to pay significant taking out loans. Many of them can now either subsidize it or get the scholarship, so that's big. But with that said, when you talk about the Power Five and all the money that they're making, I certainly believe in player rights, and that goes all the way down. So if that means that I have to take a step back because now I'm a little more concerned because a player that I enjoyed watching for my institution has the right and opportunity to look at different options, so be it. I'm going to advocate for the athletes. We'll find a way. I think we got some significant coaches, and they're good at what they do. And it may be tough, but I think at the end of the day, they'll find a way to get it done. Like life, people will move on. So just wanted to add that thought process there a little bit in terms of what that looks like. So I thought that was fascinating. Shortly, today's show will be a good one as we will discuss the latest of HBCU sports as you hear us talking now. Later on the show, we'll be discussing health in the COVID-19 environment for college athletes with Dr. Victor D. Sutton, PhD, MPPA from Mississippi State Department of Health. So obviously we scheduled this before this announcement, but it seems to be extremely timely. And we get a chance to talk about some various frameworks of what he is thinking when he talks about the Department of Health, particularly looking at it from a college athlete perspective. And so I'm fascinated about that. But as we jump back into it, what other news did you want to share before we get into that?
Oh, sure thing. Well, our partners with the Black College Sports Network, they have named their Player of the Year candidates on the NAI level, the Division II level, and the large school level. So make sure you go to mybcsn.net to vote on these players. But let me give you some of the players here who are candidates for Player of the Year. We'll start on the NAIA level. Darryl Baker, he's a senior 6'4" guard from Talladega. Rashawn Mark, a 6'3" senior guard from Xavier. Devin Merriweather, he's a 6'1" junior from Stillman. And Trey Petty, he's a 6'2" guard who's also at Stillman. We take a look now at the Division II level. Glenn Abel from West Virginia State, 6'2" guard. Greg Boyd, a 5'10" senior guard from Tuskegee. From West Virginia State, Anthony Pittman, 6'5" forward. And Cy Witt from Lincoln, Missouri. He is a 6'8" junior forward. We take a look on the Division I level Player of the Year candidates. Jawan Daniels, 6'7" guard from Harlem, New York. Tristan Jarrett from Jackson State. He's a 6'4" guard. Anthony Tark, 6'6" guard from Coppin State. And Davion Warren, he is a 6'6" guard from Hampton. So those are your Player of the Year candidates from Black College Sports Network. So, and they also have candidates on the women's side. So let me see, can I pull them up real quick?
Yeah, as you're doing that, I'll jump in here, and I wanted to talk about A&T Track. Runs the fastest 4x400 time for news coming out of HBCUGameDay.com. As we knew last week, they won the National Indoor Championship, and they continue as they go to the Outdoor Championship with North Carolina A&T. Track continues the amazing year with the 4x400. Man, you got Daniel Stokes, Trevor Stewart, sophomore Randall Ross, senior Elijah Young, and they are putting them up and picking them up, I shouldn't say, and putting them down. Man, they are tremendous in terms of how they're showing off over there in A&T. Before we get in here, I believe we have our guest, Dr. Victor Sutton. Let's go ahead and bring him on, and then after that, we'll allow you to share the women's side of that news for the final candidates. We'll kind of split it into the interview. How you doing, Victor? Welcome to the show.
I appreciate you having me. How you doing? Hope everybody's doing well.
We're doing well here. Some of us are disappointed a little more than others. You know, we have too much of our fandom probably in regards to college sports, specifically HBCU, as you know, that's what we talk about here. Today you had the cancellation. COVID protocols gets another SWAC member institution this spring football this year. Prairie View continues to be in the protocol. And because of that, they were scheduled to play Alabama A&M this weekend, as well as Southern next weekend. So those games were postponed. Earlier, you had the fact with Grambling coming out of their protocol in its 2 weeks that they also had a game canceled against Texas Southern that included this week as well. So in a lot of ways, we're going to jump right into it and first ask you how you doing in COVID-19.
And it has been nonstop. You know, it's been nonstop. We've been, dealing with, we know in our community, when we're talking about HBCUs, a lot of times we're talking about Black folks. We know that when other folks catch the cold, we catch the flu. And that has been the case with this COVID, man. But, luckily, help's on the way, man. And this shot that they have, the shots that's available, it's our pathway out of this mess. I'm sick of wearing masks. I'm sick of not dabbing my brothers up. You know, it's enough's enough. So this is the way we get out of it is by trying to get vaccinated and still understanding that we're not out the woods yet. We're not out the woods yet.
I really appreciate you saying that. The cultural component of how you said that, and just the realness how you said that, and how it is impacting you in terms of just your lived experiences. This is Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Joining us as our guest is Dr. Victor Sutton, PhD, MPPA from Mississippi State Department of Health. We're talking to him about COVID-19. Obviously, we're going to talk about the entire health, but we're going to have a focus on college athletics. So we'll mix it up a little bit back and forth. Before I let Charles jump in and follow up with questions, I just wanted to get right to it in some ways. How has COVID-19 affected college sports from your perspective?
You know, it's from high school to Pee-wee to recreation on up. You know, everything was canceled. Everything was canceled. Everything was called off. We're not used to that. You know, we're not used to having it feels unnatural having, to be honest, personally, having a spring season. It doesn't feel natural that we have to get used to it. And so I think that it's affected me personally because I'm a big follower of just HBCU period, but I do follow Jackson State in particular. And so, you know, go Tigers. But outside of that,
all right,
but outside of that, I'm just a big proponent of our HBCUs period. So, you know, I'm just ready to get back to where it's been. And that's how it's affected me. It's affected me. It's affected my family because we can't go to games like we normally would. It's competing against other things that normally we have going on in the spring. It's a little off kilter here a little bit. So, you know, those are the things that has impacted me personally. And then just the frustration of things being canceled. You mentioned earlier that things are being canceled and put off. And, you know, and the message that, you know, we're trying to send these athletes is that it's just as important as what you do when you're not on the field, when you're not on the court. It's just as important of what you're doing and following those protocols and being safe as it is when you're around other folks and teammates and that kind of thing, around social distancing, wearing your mask and some of those kind of things. So, you know, we're not out the woods yet. And so if we really want to get this thing taken care of and come back to a normal fall of tailgating, of packed stands and all the things that we're normal, that's normal to us, we're going to have to stay vigilant and stay focused and keep our eye on the prize, and that we're not out the woods yet. But hopefully we got a pathway to get there.
Let me follow up with a quick one. Just because you talked about athletes and preventing and what they do. So I want to ask that question. What can athletes do, in your opinion, as you talk about them, not only what's important on, but what's important off? In your opinion, what can athletes do to prevent COVID-19 from spreading?
Well, you know, and where we are in Mississippi, and we're talking about the HBCUs that we have here. We're talking about Russ. We're talking about Alcorn. We're talking about Mississippi Valley. We're talking about Jackson State. And we're talking about HBCUs in the state. I know that the shot is available to everyone here in our state. Okay, it's available to everyone. So there's an opportunity for you to get vaccinated. Okay, so I think that's, if you so choose and you do the research, you know that it's safe. We know that African Americans have a reason to be distrustful, and we have a good reason to be. We got a history of being, but we can say that I can say unequivocally that it was African Americans that was helpful and responsible for help developing the vaccine, a lot of different vaccine that was there. So one thing that we can do is get vaccinated. The other thing that we do is that we can still follow protocols. We know those protocols of washing your hands, not sharing things, keeping your distance, and if you're not around your immediate group of folks, wear your mask when you're out in public and you're doing the certain things. We have a lot of folks out here acting like everything is we're back to normal, and we're seeing nationally in other states where there's been an uptick. There's been an uptick, and so we want to make sure that we get back to where we want to get back to in a few months. But to do that, athletes need to stay vigilant and understand that if you want things back the way they used to be, if you're missing out on things. I mean, you got a short window. You got a short window to enjoy this athletic career, college career, and then you have a short window to improve your opportunities to go to the next level. And if you want to do that, you need to do that the same thing as hard as folks train and vigilant and training and exercising and what they put in their body. They need to be just as vigilant as making sure they protect themselves from COVID, because we're still trying to find out what these long-term effects are.
Oh, well said. Good points. Charles, jump in here and ask a couple of follow-up questions.
Sure, and I wanted to follow up on something you were saying, Dr. Sutton, in terms of the pathway to getting back to some normalcy is getting vaccinated. But you touched on it. There is a stigma associated with the African American community as far as getting vaccinated. Is there a way to, and I think you mentioned that the vaccine itself, in a lot of ways, was created, by black people to kind of get through this thing. But how do we break through the stigma of the vaccination itself?
Yeah, I think this platform that you guys provide is obviously a great vehicle for educating, for having a dialogue, for communicating, and for providing facts. We know that we can't get our facts off Facebook. We can't get it off a lot of different platforms. So we want to put the facts out there, and then folks can make their own decisions. So I think, to your point, is education. We're going to have to continue to educate. We've seen a lot of trusted members of the community. We know a lot of pastors that have been publicly getting vaccinated. We know a lot of athletes have publicly been getting vaccinated. And so I think we can't do enough of trying to communicate. What we found out, to be honest, with some of the data and some of the surveys that we put out, is that the older Americans, they get it. They want to get vaccinated. There's been some issues around access that we've been having to try to deal with, but older Americans and older individuals, older Black folks getting it. It's millennials and some of the younger folks that we're having to kind of convince a little bit, and they've been historically been some of the ones that have been unintentionally spreading some of that. So, that's just something that we're going to have to just stay vigilant at, because we're going to get to a point where we're having all the we're providing vaccine, and we're having all the folks who want to get vaccinated, and then we're going to hit that wall to where that hesitancy, and where the folks who are not sure or a little distrustful or want to see how this works, that's where we're going to have to get to, and that's going to be the next wave of folks that we need to just continue to educate and provide the opportunities so we can get this herd immunity.
Given the political climate of the country, obviously there was a change at the top in January, but have we seen that climate sort of change, especially in the South, with Southern governors obviously wanting to open things up? Where do you, from your vantage point, where do you see sort of this thing sort of going from a standpoint of vaccinations and the juxtaposing that with opening up opening up things? Is it too soon? Is it where are we in that regard?
That's a great question, and and I think there's two sides of some of that coin. We did see a decrease in some of the data points. The data points were deaths. We did see a decrease in deaths, and we did see a decrease in hospitalizations. And so at one point in time, you couldn't even get into an emergency room. You couldn't get into intensive care because there were no beds. And so when we saw that going down, then we had a lot of folks feel like it was okay to open things up. And a lot of folks felt that it was a little bit too soon and too quick to do some of those activities, too soon to open things up. But you also had a push of the reality of with the business community and other things that, we lost a lot of restaurants, and a lot of small business owners had to close doors and different things. So it was trying to keep that balance. And so I think during the midst of all of this, it's trying to keep that balance, understanding that we can have some things, but the right mix was ensuring that if you had a restaurant open, that as you saw, there was spatially there were distance. servers wore masks and people wore masks and doing those kind of things. And so still trying to keep that balance, Charles. It was tough, but it was a push and pull on a lot of different sides of the fences.
Sure.
Let me follow up on the mental health concerns. A lot of this. A lot of people are talking about that with general, and we had somebody talk about fans at the very beginning of this when everything was shut down in terms of mental health. But in terms of college athletes and COVID-19, what are you seeing in the research, or what are you hearing, or just what are your thoughts in terms of mental health? Talk to a lot of athletic directors, vice presidents of intercollegiate athletics, and that's been a major concern. I know I've talked to Kevin Granger, he's the VP of athletics at Texas Southern University, and he's really shared with me different things that he's looking at to make sure that he's really working with his athletes in terms of the entire staff of understanding the mental stress and fatigue. One, trying to make sure athletes get an opportunity to enjoy sports that they love to play, but also understanding there are a lot of conditions around it that may be stressful. What are you seeing, or what are you hearing, or any recommendations you may have to share in what that looks like?
You know, I think you hit on a magical point. You talk about mental health, and it's just such a big issue in our community. And when I say our community, I'm talking about the African American community. We don't like to talk about mental health issues. We don't like to talk about depression. We don't like to talk about those kind of issues in our community. So that they're difficult within itself before COVID. But having COVID as it relates to the athlete, you had kids that really went into a lot of depression. That and didn't really know what that was. Even when you're sad and you don't know why you're sad and you're just feeling kind of blue, that could be a mild form of depression. And not necessarily just a severe case. And so I think there was a lot of mental issues that were going on, or mental health issues and mental health challenges during this whole COVID. And not only just because of kids or athletes that couldn't play, or athletes that were training and couldn't get on the field, or couldn't do and was missing the sport and couldn't, but you had social issues. They couldn't get together and hang out like they normally would. They couldn't visit parents or grandparents like they normally could. Folks that there's a whole segment of our population that haven't seen their parents or their grandparents that have been in nursing homes for over a year. Okay, and back in March in 2020, nursing homes haven't let you in the door, and probably in the past 6 months you were able to FaceTime and do some of those kind of things. And so that has been a big strain, and everyone has a story. That has been a big strain on a lot of communities and a lot of athletes and just people in general. So the mental health aspect, I mean, we can't even really know what the impact is, because it's been across the board. So I think that's a great point, and COVID just exacerbated a lot of that.
Man, I really appreciate the information and the light that you're sharing and shining on this. If you don't mind, if you stay with us for a quick break, we'll bring you back and close out the interview. I'll let Charles come in and ask a question, and then I'll close out a question, and then let you provide any information that you would like to share. This is Dr. Cavil inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We're interviewing Dr. Victor D. Sutton, PhD, MPPA, from Mississippi State Department of Health, sharing us some insights in terms of the health, in terms of COVID-19 and how it's affecting college athletics, as well as just the general public in terms of fans of athletics, sharing a wealth of knowledge, specifically looking at the African-American Black community and how there are some unique frameworks that we need to consider when we look at their population. With that, we'll be right back with you. Do not change that dial. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Follow the Black College Sports Network on social media at MyBCSN1, the number 1, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MyBCSN1.
Because the fight isn't over yet.
You will see me choose to protect my community by wearing a face cover.
And even with my face covered,
you will see me.
As a son.
As a man with a never quit attitude.
As a fighter for change.
Join me in wearing a face cover. to help stop the spread of the coronavirus.
Because this is one small act of kindness
that has the power to make a big difference.
Your ad could be ran here. MyJBN.com/support. MyJBN.com/support for more information.
It's like a loot machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Mike is out on assignment, but we're holding it down with Mr. Charles Bishop, better known as Professor Charles Bishop. And we have none other than Dr. Victor D. Sutton, PhD, MPPA from Mississippi State Department of Health. Again, as we said, he's sharing some extremely important information on COVID-19 and just giving a breath of knowledge of what things you should consider in regards to COVID-19, specifically looking at college athletes, HBCU, and the African-American Black community. With that, we'll finish up the interview here. Let's get right back to it. Let me go back to you, Charles, for a follow-up question.
Yeah, one of the things that we're seeing, Dr. Sutton, is these various variants of COVID that are starting to affect different parts of the country. How do you think this will affect testing going forward? Does the testing protocols now catch these other variants that are coming forward?
That's a great question. The variance is when we talked earlier about seeing the uptick in different states. The variants are the ones that's responsible for that uptick. And to your question, the testing it catches the variants, and so the different strands that's out there, the traditional testing catches those particular variants. The also good thing about it is that the current vaccines have proven to be effective against the variant. Okay. But the variants seem to spread a little quicker and a little bit easier from person to person as opposed to some of the traditional COVID. And so that's why we still need to stay vigilant about keeping some space and still wearing your mask around when you're in the public and when you're not outside of your nucleus family and folks that you're comfortable with and being with in your same area that you see on a regular basis. But yes, the testing is catching the variants, and they're responsible. They've been responsible for the uptick that we've seen in other states.
Yeah, great point again. And you're hitting it. Want to share a little shout out here. Kay Johnson, Doc, be sure to tell Dr. Sutton hello. So you got some fans out here. People know what you're doing, putting in their work.
That's a dear friend of mine. Tell her I said hello. Make
sure she's listening, so she got it. Dr. Mario Jessup, FAHA cardiologist and chief science medical officer for the American Heart Association, said, quote, I'm quoting here, there have been many high-profile cases of athletes at collegiate and professional levels showing myocarditis, a dangerous inflammation of the heart after COVID-19, end quote. With that saying, how do you think this is going to impact the future of sports? What are you reading or seeing already? And how much this will probably continue for a while? Although we may have the vaccinations, may be able to see, various movement in terms of fans even coming back to the stands at a larger number and things of that nature. What are your thoughts in terms of how is this going to affect sports, and you can impact it any way that you see fit?
Yeah, that's a very great point. And we don't know what the long-term effects are. I mean, we're still trying to find out what the long-term effects are. We know that it kind of hit us, and then things start shutting down probably February, March of last year in 2020. And so we do know that we've had some folks have this short-term type issues about being a little misty and foggy with their memory and some of those kind of things, and some of those temporary side effects that have gone away. But I think the research is still out there. I think the researchers, we're still looking at the research, still looking at the data, still studying what may be some of the long-term effects of this. And that's why we wrap it back around that if you haven't had it, you got to prevent yourself. You got to make sure you don't get it. You got to get vaccinated. You got to wear your mask. You got to social distance. And you got to do that until the time that we feel like is safe, and that we're hearing from our researchers, our scientists that have the data that's showing that it's safe, and looking at those particular indicators. And so I think the jury is still out, and I think that you raise a real important question, but there has been some data to support. There has been some short-term effects even after you've gotten that, even if after you've gotten gone through the whole cycle with COVID and you're COVID-free, that you're still having some remnants of things that have been kind of reported. So I think the jury's still out.
Certainly wanted to say thank you for your time, Dr. Victor Sutton. But before we let you go, wanted to make sure you had time to any closing comments that you thought was important that we may not have asked that you really want to impart on our viewers.
First, I want to thank both of you guys for having me on your show. And I want to thank and appreciate what you guys are giving to the community and what you guys are sharing. It's important to hear from voices like you guys, and of course, see faces like you guys. So I want to say thank you. And if I just want to say anything in closing, it's just to reiterate, the vaccination has proven to be safe. It has been tested. And it's a pathway back to normalcy, okay? And so I wanted to have your listeners to understand that if you're hesitant, that's fine. Do your research. Go to CDC website, go to NIH website, take a look at what's there and what kind of concerns that you have. Talk to others who've had the shot. I've had the shot. I had a Moderna shot. I had my second shot. The first shot, I was fine. I had a sore arm. The second shot, I had to lay down for a little while. I laid down for a few hours, and then I was fine. And everybody have different experiences, but talk to folks who've had the shot and do your research. It's our pathway back to some sense of normalcy, and we're not out the woods yet. And that's what I want to leave with your listeners.
Great point. I'm glad you shared that in very many facets. We're extremely happy to have you on the show. As we continue to move in new updates, new information you have, please let us know. We'll be more than happy to bring you back. I think viewers and listeners have gotten a lot of great information from you, and just want to say thank you. Continue to be safe and continue the great work that you're doing. We appreciate it.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
This was Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. We just finished our interview with Dr. Victor D. Sutton, PhD, MPPA from Mississippi State Department of Health. I want to give a shout out to Leslie Russey just from coordinating this in terms of rap sessions, as you would talk about. A lot of good work that she's doing. And so this was in partnership with her as she continues to get things done and help us in terms of the work that she's doing with the rap sessions research accelerated possibilities is the framework of why we were able to bring that to you. So I wanted to make sure we gave appropriate shout outs for that. But with that said, let's jump right back into it with some more sporting context in terms of what's going on. You talked about the transfer. We also got a coach with Bethune.
Yeah.
Is transferring, if you would. He's transferring over to the OVC, University of Tennessee Martin. That program lost their head coach that passed COVID related earlier this year. So he's leaving Bethune-Cookman and heading to the OVC. So Bethune-Cookman, as they come into the SWAC, will be looking for a new coach. Young coach, came out of JUCO ranks, got his first Division I opportunity, paid off in a championship, regular season, a co-championship there in the MEAC, big deal. Wasn't quite able to be as successful in the tournament, but this is his third year, and obviously Bethune-Cookman did not have a season as they counseled all sports earlier as we moved into this COVID part of the year. So it'll be interesting to see how they will rebound. Any thoughts that you have in regards to that update that was brought to you by HBCU Game Day?
I think it's a good move for Coach Ritter. 48 and 45 while they're at Bethune-Cookman, so they were able to move the needle, if you will. He did some really good things over there at BCU, 31 and 17 overall. So I think Bethune-Cookman was moving in the right trajectory. So it'll be interesting to see who they get as a coach now to help them move forward as they transition over to the Southwestern Athletic Conference.
Staying in with the basketball, I know you wanted to share. You shared earlier with BCSN as they produce the men's side of those that would be looking at the top. What about on the women's side? What do you have for us for basketball player of the year, potential players of the year?
Sure. And again, you can go to mybcsn.net where you can vote on these players. These players of the year will be chosen by a panel of media members who follow HBCU athletics, and fans also get an opportunity to vote not only on my BCSN.net website, but also on their Twitter page.
College Sports Network, yes.
Yes, exactly. So Division I Player of the Year candidates: Darianna Lewis, she's a 6'1" forward from Alabama A&M. Deja Rogan, she's a 5'4" guard, senior guard from Jackson State. Shannon Scott, she is a 6' guard from North Carolina A&T. And Jayla Thornton is a 5'9" guard from Howard. When we take a look at the Division II candidates, Ayana Bay from Benedict, 6'2" forward. 5'10" guard from West Virginia State is Destiny Fields. From Tuskegee, Ashaya Jackson, she's a 6'1" forward. And Diamond Jones rounds out the Division II candidates from Fort Valley State. She's a 5'3" guard. We take a look at the NAIA Player of the Year candidates now. Ashika Alexander from Langston. LaQuanza Glover from Edward Waters. Taisha Juan from Talladega. And Kiana Tolbert from Florida Memorial. So those are your Player of the Year candidates. Make sure you go to mybcsn.net to vote for your Player of the Year candidate.
Yeah, now some of y'all got a voting component in this. Y'all better act it up. You see what they do in the NBA All-Star. We'll see how much of y'all can vote to one direction. It's only a percentage, so don't lose your mind. But hey, voice your opinion. That's what it's there for. Sticking with basketball, we talked about the SWAC with Bethune-Cookman transitioning over to the SWAC with a new coaching search on the men's side of basketball. Well, and South Carolina State has actually named a men's basketball coach. Madlock is coming in, assistant out of Memphis University, NBA All-Star Penny Hardaway was announced as the new South Carolina State men's basketball coach last Thursday for the Bulldogs. Athletic Director Stacey L. Danley has made that announcement in regards to Coach Madlock in terms of what he will get done. It'll be interesting to see what's going on there. Any thoughts in terms of that move for South Carolina State? Looks like he has quite a bit of good experience. It's going to be interesting as he mixes it up with some tough programs that are remaining in the MEAC, with obviously Norfolk State, North Carolina Central. You got to believe that they're going to be right back in the mix as they come back hard and heavy. And then you had some of these new members that were taking a move in a upward trajectory. Coppin State and Morgan State making some moves. Howard had a nice recruiting class that came in. Obviously, it didn't quite work out in terms of what they would thought on the court because they had to cancel the season after a while. But what are your thoughts about this move with South Carolina State?
It should be a pretty decent move for South Carolina State, as we've seen this coach being on Penny Hardaway's staff. Coach Hardaway really came in over at University of Memphis and really shook things up, especially on the recruiting trail. So it'll be interesting to see if he can bring some of that recruiting prowess over to South Carolina State and get them into the upper echelon of MEAC basketball.
Any other news you want to share before this week? I'm not going to do you like I did you and Mike last week for waiting to the end to announce my poll and make y'all freeze on it until Thursday. I'm going to give you a little more love this week, a little more time to tuck your lips and see what you want to say about the poll coming out of it, released this Tuesday. But any news that you want to share before we jump into the update of the poll rank?
Couple of interesting notes. We talk about this sort of an HBCU renaissance that we see going on. But I wanted to mention Skylar Jordan. He's the son of R&B star back from the 90s, Montel Jordan. He signed with Alcorn State. He had a pretty prolific career in high school. And then Hersey Miller, who is the son of Master P. He has decided to take his talents to Tennessee State. So kudos to both of those young men in terms of exploring the HBCU environment and see what it means for them.
Yeah, that'll be fascinating. It's always intriguing when you see famous children of famous fans out there that getting into the mix, and specifically when they're going to HBCUs. A lot of culture and fun. It'll be interesting to see how that goes down. This week, receiving votes. We got a new team receiving votes this week. You have Tennessee State Tigers 2-3 in the conference race in the OVC there. They got a big win over UT Martin. Just held on to the win. They jumped out big, and then they let UTM come back. And actually, it was a failed 2-point conversion, which potentially would put that in overtime. That was stopped by the Tennessee State Tigers that allowed them to essentially run out the clock and take home the victory. So they improved to 2-3 on the season. It'll be fascinating to see how they continue to make a move. That's 2 wins out of the last 3. So playing some pretty good football of late, even though they may have stumbled a little bit in that game. You got to give them credit as they continue to make a difference. We'll talk a little bit more in terms of inside the numbers as we have that as the long game on Thursday, but wanted to make sure that you got a little insight there. Delaware State Hornets, obviously game council last week, Howard, Delaware State. So they sit at 1-1. South Carolina State Bulldogs haven't played in a while. They'll get a chance to play this week against Alabama State. So we got another MEAC SWAC challenge. So that's another one to keep your eyes on. Anytime you get those intra-conference matchups between the 2 Division I HBCU conference, better known as the MEAC and SWAC, it's always fascinating. If you're in this side of the country, you like to say SWAC MEAC. And with that said, they're receiving votes. And then Alabama State Hornets, after their big victory last week, the week before last with Jackson State, they were not able to finish a game, but they started out pretty strong in the game, were looking well over Pine Bluff. So I'm sure they're disappointed that the thunderstorms came down in Pine Bluff and canceled that game, because I'm sure they thought they were going to be able to close out strong. But they increased some points, but are not able to jump in the top 5 as they did not get to finish that game against Arkansas Pine Bluff. With that, no one drops out this week. Top 5 programs, there are some changes. So I'll see what your thoughts either about no team jumping into the top 5 or some of the changes I have in the top 5. But number 5, Southern Jaguars 2-1 on the season, obviously 2-1 in the conference race. They add a first place vote this week, 75 points. They remain at 5, but they do add a first place vote. Arkansas Pine Bluff Golden Lions are 2-0. They drop a spot this week from number 3. They also lose a first place vote. That first place vote, I imagine, went to Southern. They have 83 points. Prairie has not played, but I guess by the way Arkansas played in that game, they get the benefit of the doubt and jump up to number 3, 2-0. But they're in trouble. They won't play for the next 2 weeks, so it's hard to hold that if everybody else is playing around you. But at this point, they're at number 3, 1 first place vote, 84 points, moving up a spot. Bringing you to number 2, Jackson State Tigers, 3-1, 2-1 in the conference race, 4 first place votes, 109 points, remain at the 2 spot. They have a showdown. That's 2 versus 5, according to my poll this week. You got the number 5 team coming up to Jackson with a big time rival. Boy, it gets no better. Always hot, but now you're talking about a top 5 matchup. Who is going to remain in the top 5 after this matchup? Or can both of them stay in there? But we shall see. Number 1 is Alabama A&M Bulldogs, 1-0, 5 first place votes, 110 points. You imagine, based on what happens with Jackson State and Southern, and even maybe Pine Bluff as they take on Valley. And again, we'll take a deep dive on Thursday. But I doubt that Alabama A&M will be able to hold on to the number 1 spot based on a top 5 program featuring up. Whoever comes out of that is going to make a point of possibly number 1. And then Arkansas Pine Bluff can make a statement against Mississippi Valley as well. So it'll be interesting to see what's going on. Top 5 programs, Alabama A&M Bulldogs remains in the top spot in week number 5. Your turn to take it on, Charles. Professor Bishop, tell us, what do you say when we go inside the numbers? Anything you talk about my top 5, or Dr. Ville's top 5, I should say. Any concerns with the top 5 poll?
Concerns. Well, that one quarter the Arkansas Pine Bluff played against Alabama State seemed to hurt them this week. So unfortunately, they dropped back a spot, if you will, behind Prairie View. But that was going to be a really interesting game. I hate the Storms caught them up. Alabama State's defense continued to look like a very formidable defense going against a really top-notch offense. Skylar Perry wasn't able to do some of the things that he was able to do the first few weeks of the season, and then we don't know how much the environment played into it because the storms were on their way and the wind was pretty high. So I hate not seeing the completion of that game, but this number 5 versus number 2 this weekend. Southern and Jackson State, anytime they get together, I often say, I don't care whether it's football, basketball, or marbles. It's a rivalry of all rivalries. It is what it is. So it should be really fun this weekend. Southern gets to make that nice little 2.5-hour drive up 55 to Jackson this weekend, and we'll see what the Jackson State Tigers can do if they're really for real. A ball bounce here, a ball bounce there. We could be looking at a different story than 3-1. So it'll be very interesting if we get a data point at least this weekend with Jackson State and Southern.
Yeah, one of the things I've seen in that, it was a little more than a quarter play. It was about 6 minutes into the half, and obviously football is a football game, meaning there are 2 halves, 4 quarters, and they tell you must play it all. And we've seen a lot of things happen between a quarter, a half, with a couple of minutes to go in the game. So, but just the way that Alabama State was taking it to Pine Bluff, I think the reason why you've seen some fluctuation in that poll. And you got to understand, you're going to see large fluctuation in these polls because you just don't have a lot of data points. So people are going to sway, and the computer's going to sway significantly just by little reactions because you just don't have a lot of data points. Before we start to close it off, I did want to get your thoughts on the Prentiss Hill State Fair Diamond Classic, Lone Star Diamond Classic. Obviously, the State Fair Diamond Classic was not played because of COVID protocols on the baseball side for Prairie View against Grambling. But the Lone Star was played against Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and Southern. Obviously, the last game was pretty competitive. Southern came back, got that game, so they sweeped everything and got it done in a lot of ways. But what's fascinating about the atmosphere, I heard positive things from so many different people. The coaches, the players, the fans, media people, just talking about different components about the game. Whether you were there watching it live, just a beautiful atmosphere, a beautiful ballpark, the way everything was handled, the sponsors involved in that, credit to Prentiss Hill in terms of what was going on. And then you got a great accolades from BCSN producer Roy in terms of what he was able to do. A lot of the coaches were excited and enamored about the quality of that. Black College Nines, in terms of what they do, they had a lot of feedback in helping facilitate making it happen. This goes back to that game. And earlier that week, you had the game in Jacksonville between NAIA Division II programs, if you would. So it was fascinating. What are your thoughts in terms of what Prentiss was able to do? What things are you hearing about that Lone Star Diamond Classic?
Well, first and foremost, hats off to Prentiss in terms of putting this classic together so that we can get exposed to more Black college baseball. You know, I'm a baseball guy. I'm a baseball fan. I grew up playing baseball, and to get an opportunity to watch Black College Sports Network to broadcast this baseball game, this tremendous. And kudos to Brian Fulford and the play-by-play on it was spotless. I really enjoyed it.
Shout out to Nick Strong.
Nick Strong as well. You know, Nick Strong, he is a definite baseball guy, provided some tremendous insight. So I really enjoyed just being able to watch HBCU baseball this weekend. It was a lot of fun. So, you know, I look forward to, you know, this more of a partnership between broadcasting HBCU baseball and Black College Nines and everybody getting some exposure, getting their programs out there in front of more eyeballs.
No doubt about it. Great points. Did have the SHAC giving the women some love. SWAC volleyball named Jackson State. Pine Bluff had to forfeit the game because of COVID protocol. So it is real out there getting that far. Getting a mild upset, some people would say, in terms of 3-2 matchup against Prairie View, even though Prairie View was taken to the wire down there at the end of the season. So it's one of those things. You do have the Pairings set up for MEAC Championship in terms of what's going on with Norfolk State. Eccles Hall is where it'll be host Friday and Saturday. So that'll be fascinating to see what goes on there with Colvin State and North Carolina State as the number 1 seed from the North takes on the Southern seed. Number 1 seed from the South. So that should be a great matchup with the top 2 teams rise to the top. we'll see what goes on there with a lot of the teams in the MEAC tournament. But that'll do it for us as we close up on 120 in the books. Join us Thursday as we give you much more update and go into football. While you have a couple of cancellations, you still got a lot of great games on the radar. So I'll be tuned in across the dial to get that in. Thank you for listening to Inside HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Hope you enjoyed our interview earlier with Dr. Sutton, Dr. Victor Sutton, I should say. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Bill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock. And check us out for our Sunday weekend version of what we do, special version of the show. Obviously, last Sunday, you got a sneak peek of an interview I did with HBCU football, as we did not do a show with all the games being canceled that Saturday. So check that out and let me know what you think of that. Just gave you some insight in terms of what that looks like. Talking about Jake Gaither and FAMU Rattlers, a lot of good history in that book there. We look forward to next week as we will discuss the latest news of the lab. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's DrKenyatta-Cavil. Again, that's DrKenyatta-Cavil. Dream big, continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles?
Of course.
Lecture
dismissed.